Well, in the heavyweight Premier League clash of the weekend, it was Manchester City at home to Tottenham Hotspur in what ended up as a 2-0 win for the away team. Thomas Frank absolutely getting the better of Pep Guardiola here, and there wasn't a lot of difference in the styles that the two managers used to go against each other here. It's just Thomas Frank got the best out of his style and overcame the deficiencies of Manchester City way more than the vice versa. They dealt with everything defensively fantastic. On the front foot as well, pressing, being aggressive, getting City in the deeper areas. City even tried to combat that by going direct, but even still, Spurs rode their luck a bit at times. Who knows? A few better attempts from City, and the complexion of the game changes. Marmoush and Haaland probably should have had a couple goals, but they didn't. And Spurs maintained their composure, maintained the quality throughout the game, and got the win. And I'm going to detail how that happened now, starting with City's on the ball shape, which is the home team. Before I get into the meat and potatoes of the tactical analysis, I'd like to talk to you guys. If you get to the end of this video and you liked it, please show that in the form of a like. It helps me out, it helps the channel grow and get more awareness on it. And it would mean a great deal to me if you did that. Only if you liked it, though. I want to earn it. I want to need your love. It's like a toxic relationship. I'm just striving for something, and you only give it me every now and then. But I'm just constantly hungry for it. This is getting weird. I'm trying to analyze football here. Yeah, on the video. Now Spurs high press City man to man everywhere in City's half. And I think City anticipated this to a degree because they tried to sucker Spurs' pressing to create more space for Haaland in the front line. But in one of many things that Spurs did better than City, it wasn't as effective, even though it still had its threat, which I know probably doesn't make the most amount of sense. And so they would try and hold on to the ball here, maybe play it between the centre back and the goalkeeper for the goal kicks to bring Spurs higher up the pitch, create more separation from the midfield and the defensive line, to leave Haaland isolated against Romero and in more aggressive areas. To then also, if he could win those headers, win those duels with Romero, he could then look to play in the likes of Marmoush and Oscar Bob. So Trafford going long here. Haaland can knock it down either for Bob coming across or knock it in for Marmoush going in behind, running off of Porro, which he did. We know Porro's a bit lax sometimes with his defensive concentration. And Marmoush exploited that. And they did get their fair share of openings, it's fair to say, just lacked that little bit of quality at the end to make it a goal. Didn't create the separation I felt necessary between the defence and the midfield. It felt like Spurs, if the attack wasn't directly resulting in a goal instantly, they could get back in, they could cover, they could fill space. A complete contrast, as I'll talk about on the other end of the spectrum when Spurs attacked. So that was a case, and to be fair, Trafford went long with a lot of his goal kicks, a lot of them. Whether that was directly or interchange between him and Diaz, maybe Diaz playing the goal kick to Trafford to then knock it long. So clearly, part of the game plan, wanting to go direct, wanting to hit Spurs in their heart, very un-Pep Guardiola-like. Also thought leaving Romero and Haaland was a bit of a gamble, but it paid off. Romero matched him physically, tenacious in getting against him. I just thought Van de Ven for the size. But to be fair to Haaland, he does struggle against those sort of terrier-like centre-backs, because he has struggled a bit against Lissandro Martinez, and he's about 6 foot taller than him. Romero isn't that small, but just did enough, battled with him well, just gave him enough of a nuisance to put him off his actions. And fair play to Romero. I feel like the first few games of the season, he has been excellent. I think he's been probably one of the best centre-backs across the opening couple weekends. But City did try and play out the odd time, and it didn't go well for the second and killer goal. Trafford's distribution short range was very, very poor. Felt like he was doing his best to play players under pressure with not weighting the passes properly, with giving it them at angles which immediately puts them under pressure. And Spurs' press was good. Spurs' press was aggressive. They were up against their man, as you can see here. Anticipated Rico Lewis inverting into midfield excellently by making sure Bentancur was marking him too. And even if Rico Lewis did move out into this position here, you'd then get Jed Spence moving up from Oscar Bob with Van de Ven covering around. So it felt like they had their contingencies if it just went a bit differently, but Bentancur did his job well. Sarr blocking the central progression through Nico, which, I mean, Sarr's a pressing cheat code, and Paulinho on Rangers, and it meant Trafford's attempt to play out through the centre for that second goal was fruitless. It was pointless. Played a pass completely under pressure, and then with that central blockade, with City not really creating the width from their build-up, it meant that that front six for Spurs were immediately in the box and ready to capitalise on the mistake that City made in playing out. Fantastic from Spurs. onto him quickly. And a player that they could have used to create some havoc for Spurs was Cherky, who wouldn't come as deep as the rest of the midfield. Even Reinders would come into this position here to look for the ball, and Polina following suit, which Polina did for the second goal because he followed him into the box. You'd also get Cherky coming into this position here, maybe out wide right, if Lewis was starting to move forward and he could find passing angles from deep, whether that's from Trafford or Nico moving inside to play it around. Van der Ven would engage high up. Van der Ven pressed him all over the pitch, going into the box, which he did for the second goal. Cherky was getting ready to drop in and help City play out. Van der Ven followed him in there, followed him into a right back position. He did not let him off. And as much as physically there was a bit of a mismatch with Romero and Haaland, which is why I thought Van der Ven would be needed, physically he had the advantage over Cherky. And Cherky didn't really get any time on the ball to turn, play, and cause issues because of how well Van der Ven stuck to his job. And it's one thing to press and get pulled out of position. You have to be quick with it because, as we'll talk about with City, if you give players a couple seconds, one or two touches to commit to their actions, you're done because you've already committed to that pressing movement. It's gone past you, and now you're chasing your tail a bit. Whereas Van der Ven did his bit excellently to the point where Cherky could drop in. And what this could do as well to try and offer a bit of a route for City to play out was then this could create a passing angle to Oscar Bob, who would drop in a little bit shorter than the rest of his front three to receive the ball. And I thought also had the beating of Jed Spence. Jed Spence wouldn't be too touch tight with him. He'd let him get away from him a bit. And it did give Oscar Bob the odd moment to move away from him, turn inside, and commit to his actions. On the odd time, however, that it was Jed Spence that tracked Cherky and it was Van der Ven that was left on Bob, Bob didn't get the same amount of joy at all. Van der Ven just bullied him a bit. There was a massive size difference between the two. And it's good to show how quality a defender Van der Ven is. With all his injuries, I feel like we've forgotten a bit. But he's fantastic defending in behind the defensive line if it's high. He's fantastic defending it when he's having to press high and engage. He's such an unbelievably brilliant two-way defender. And if he can stay fit for an entire season, Spurs are going to have a fantastic year of football. I really believe he's that important. Him and Romero, to be fair, I think they're a fantastic centre-back partnership. And as I say, City struggled to play out, and once Spurs got 2-0 up, they dropped into a 4-5-1 shape that could even drop into a 5-4-1. Polina also dropped into that defensive line to try and cover space if need be. And it was a fantastic defensive display from Spurs, pressing and being front-footed, not just allowing City to have possession and restricting space. There was plenty risk and plenty of reward, and they deserved it for the bravery they'd shown and the spirit that they showed with it. Full credit, Thomas Frank. How did City not get it as right in there on the ball shape? Spurs would build up in a 2-4-4 with Palhinha and Bentancur as the pivots in between the centre-backs. You'd get Sarr, who would push higher up in the more advanced areas alongside Richarlison, allowing the Spurs wingers to spread wide. Which, as much as I love Sarr, he's not that technical player that's going to receive it on the half-turn under pressure. You want his movement higher up where he can run into channels, create space for others. Thought the understanding of profiles from Thomas Frank, not just in this game, but so far for Spurs, has been excellent. And City would press high and leave themselves at a disadvantage. And for a couple of reasons. One, they were 5-on-6 already, with Haaland supposed to press from Romero across to Van der Ven. So they're already a man down. Oscar Bob could also tuck in and press into Van der Ven in this area to really try and close them in, which would leave Jed Spence free. So if they could commit to that well enough, then Spurs could be blocked in. But like City, Spurs are okay with playing long if they felt like that's what they had to do. And also, they were okay with using Jed Spence as the free man if they could free up space, which was easier done with Vicario, who I thought played one of his better games as a sort of ball-playing goalkeeper. I feel like sometimes his distribution and his ability with the ball at his feet has let him down. But where it was already a 5-on-6 for Manchester City, it became a 5-on-7, as Vicario could bring the ball out, split the two centre-backs even wider, creating a lot of space between Haaland and Bob, or Haaland and whoever, in trying to press, so he could pick his angles to play through. He could pick his passes a lot better, and he got his decisions right every time he played the ball. And even sometimes you'd get Cherky coming on to press Vicario from these angles, maybe coming around from Van der Ven. This also created an issue because it left Reindeers in between Polina and Bentancur. You'd have Bob in between Bentancur and Spence. You'd have Marmoush in between Porro and Polina. So Vicario could play a pass to either one of these players and they could receive it in space. So Spurs did a fantastic job of creating an extra man through not even a lot of work on their own. It wasn't as if they were fluid, they were constantly moving positions. At points, they could actually be pretty static. It's just when you had that man advantage, you always had a player in a zone that City did not. So they could always play through. And also, even as I was speaking about before, in that sort of first shape with Oscar Bob tucking into left back, where City tried and did an okay job, Spurs did a fantastic job of creating the separation between their back six and their front four excellently. And I do believe that the main target of this would be with the pass going into Jed Spence on this left hand side. Jed Spence, the right footer, who could turn onto his stronger right foot and play it round the corner with Bob caught onto Van der Ven. He had a little bit more space. And the separation between City's front five and their back five was so big that Lewis just couldn't get close enough, quickly enough, to Spence to put him off of his action of turning inside, looking infield, and being able to play, get Richarlison showing for the ball, dueling with Stones, dueling with Nico if he came across to cover. And it also meant that if Cherky had committed to one of the centre backs, that Nico couldn't get up the field quick enough to support that pivot area. And they left themselves wanting a lot, City, in those pressing zones. They allowed Spurs to create too big a separation. And so with a two-man disadvantage in these areas, Spurs could really get a foothold in the game. Vicario being the extra, and even if it wasn't Vicario, you'd get Bentancur dropping in between the two centre backs, creating again more of an issue, more central worries for Manchester City. Palhinha being the pivot. Haaland would obviously still be on Romero, get Bob dropping into Spence, but then you get Cherky coming into either Bentancur or Van der Ven, and they'd still be left at a disadvantage with a 2-on-3 in that back line for Spurs. And either of them could find angles around Cherky to play to Palhinha and get the ball up the field that way. However City decided to press, however City decided to position their players, Spurs had an answer and always had an advantage. And top draw from Thomas Frank, top draw from Spurs. With the right foot of Spence playing at left back to be able to whip those balls round the corner. And as much as they were happy rotating and slowly probing for an opening within that back six for Spurs, once it got to that front four, that's where it shifted into gear. That's where it really kicked on and the pace and tempo of the attack increased tenfold. Going long, going direct. Kudus dragging Aït-Nouri, or at the time of the first goal, Nathan Ake out of position into this area here. Sarr winning his duel from Diaz, coming into a wide right position. Richarlison then making the run in behind Stones. City getting their offside trap horrifically wrong. Did it well against Wolves. Stones timed it so poorly against Richarlison, and once Richarlison then gets the knock on from Sarr, who again, why Diaz is losing an aerial duel to Pape Matar Sarr, and Sarr's a fantastic player. He's a nuisance. He's aggressive. He's physical. That action should be Diaz's bread and butter there. So Richarlison then gets in behind Stones. Stones is never catching up with him. Brennan Johnson, who in a direct transitional attacking sense is a bit of a cheat code. He's fantastic. Also helped by the fact that Rico Lewis isn't watching him whatsoever. He's caught ball watching, which allows Brennan Johnson to run off the back of him. Even to the point when Richarlison gets into that more advanced position, the pass over to Johnson isn't that great. It's a little bit behind him. And if Lewis was concentrating, he could recover in and probably nick the ball. But he doesn't. And Spurs were able to attack on that right-hand side, winning their duels, going direct and using movement off of the back of City, tearing their offside trap to pieces. And when Nico did a shielding role, it felt like he was a bit useless in the defensive sense because Spurs weren't looking to play through centrally with short, flat passes. They were waiting for the opening, so you couldn't shield every one of them. And Spurs did a fantastic job as well. When they went long, it wasn't directly through the centre where Nico could cover and could engage with the physical player. They would angle it out wide. They would pull players out of position like they did for the first goal with Sarr coming out here. Nico just can't stretch that far enough along. It's got to be on Diaz to cover across and make that aerial duel. So key element of the tactical detail that Thomas Frank has paid attention to, exploited every single issue that City could have in that defensive line. And it wasn't even so much that City were bad defensively. Every defensive system has flaws. Frank just exploited them beautifully and brilliantly. And full credit to Thomas Frank. His tactical display in this game was first class. But I would love to know what you guys think. Like the video if you liked it. Comment down below and tell me if there's anything that you think I missed. Tell me if there's anything you noticed about the game that I haven't touched on. I would love to have that interaction. Subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you in a bit, lads.